Hi, I am Dr. Clarence R. Pearson Sr., and welcome to My View, a podcast where I offer my professional perspective on today's most pressing geopolitical and socioeconomic issues. Recently, my attention has been drawn to developments in the Middle East, where US Iran peace talks have broken down, and Trump has ordered a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, including imposing a 20% passage fee for all oil ships leaving the strait. Here is my view on the matter. When the Guardian becomes the toll collector, Trump's Strait of Hormuz plan challenges decades of American maritime doctrine. For more than 4 decades, the United States has presented itself as the principal defender of one of the world's most enduring maritime principles, that international waterways should remain open to all lawful commerce without coercion, discrimination, or financial extortion. That doctrine now faces one of its most significant tests. President Donald Trump's announcement that the United States will become the guardian of the Strait of Hormuz while seeking reimbursement equal to 20% of cargo transiting the waterway represents far more than another escalation in the confrontation with Iran. It raises a broader question about the future of the international maritime order itself. The debate is no longer simply about Iran. It is about whether the world's most powerful naval power can simultaneously defend freedom of navigation while charging for it. A strategic waterway with global consequences, the Strait of Hormuz is among the world's most consequential maritime choke points. Roughly one-fifth of globally traded petroleum passes through the narrow corridor separating Iran from Oman, making uninterrupted navigation essential not only to Gulf producers, but also to major energy importing economies across Asia and Europe. Because disruption in Hormuz affects energy markets almost immediately, successive American administrations, Republican and Democratic alike, have viewed freedom of navigation there as a strategic imperative rather than a commercial enterprise. That distinction has historically mattered. The United States argued that maritime security served the global commons, not a revenue model, a dramatic policy reversal. President Trump's announcement alters that premise. According to his public statements, the United States would provide security for maritime traffic while requiring reimbursement at a rate of 20% on cargo transiting the strait. He characterized the proposal as compensation for the costs of maintaining security rather than as a traditional toll. Supporters may argue that protecting one of the world's busiest shipping corridors imposes enormous financial burdens on the United States, and that beneficiaries should contribute to those costs. Critics respond that whatever terminology is used, reimbursement, assessment, or security contribution, the practical effect resembles charging for passage through an international waterway. That distinction is at the center of the legal controversy. The legal question international maritime law has long treated straits used for international navigation differently from canals, ports, or territorial facilities. Although the United States has not ratified the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, it has generally recognized many of its navigational principles as customary international law and has relied on those principles when conducting freedom of navigation operations worldwide. The International Maritime Organization reacted quickly, stating that it opposes mandatory fees for passage through international straits and sees no legal basis for imposing compulsory transit charges merely for navigating such waterways. That response highlights a difficult reality. The legal objections raised against compulsory Iranian transit fees may also be invoked against compulsory American fees. Strategic consistency. For decades, Washington criticized attempts by regional powers to use strategic waterways as instruments of political leverage. American naval deployments in the Persian Gulf were justified as protecting international commerce from coercion, ensuring that no single coastal state could transform a global shipping lane into an economic bargaining tool. The current proposal, therefore, creates an unusual strategic tension. The United States continues to argue that it is protecting navigation, yet it is simultaneously proposing a financial condition tied directly to that protection. Whether allies interpret the policy as burden sharing or as a departure from longstanding American doctrine, will shape its diplomatic consequences. Allies caught in the middle. Ironically, the countries most immediately affected may not be America's adversaries. Many of the largest users of the Strait of Hormuz are energy importing economies in Asia and Europe. Japan, South Korea, India, and several European economies rely heavily on uninterrupted Gulf energy supplies. Any substantial increase in shipping costs could ultimately be reflected in higher fuel prices, increased transportation costs, and renewed inflationary pressures worldwide. For these governments, the central question is not only legal, it is economic. Soft power and credibility. International leadership depends upon more than military capability. It depends upon predictability. The United States has historically exercised considerable influence because allies generally believed American security guarantees were tied to broadly applicable rules rather than transactional arrangements. A policy that appears to monetize naval protection risks inviting questions about the future character of American leadership. Those questions extend beyond the Persian Gulf. If security guarantees become increasingly linked to direct financial compensation, partners elsewhere may begin reassessing assumptions that have guided American alliances for generations. The larger geopolitical test. The Strait of Hormuz has always been more than a narrow passage between two coastlines. It is a test of competing visions of international order. One vision holds that strategic waterways constitute global commons whose openness benefits all nations. Another views security as a service for which beneficiaries should pay. President Trump's proposal places those competing philosophies into direct confrontation. Whether the proposal is ultimately implemented, modified, or abandoned, it has already accomplished something significant. It has transformed the debate from one about Iranian behavior alone into one about the future principles governing maritime security itself. History may remember this episode less for the proposed 20% charge than for the question it forced the international community to confront. Can the guardian of freedom of navigation also become its toll collector? My View is a continuing series where I share informed commentary on a wide range of geopolitical and socioeconomic topics. If you found today's discussion helpful, please follow, subscribe, like, and share. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I invite you to explore other My View episodes available online. Until we meet again, goodbye.